My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. I've been working really hard to deliver amazing guests and great content to you. But before we get into this week's episode, I just need your help with two things. Number one, hit that subscribe or follow button on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on so that you're one of the first to get notified when new episodes drop in the future. Number two, go to thetamilcreator.com to take a 2-minute quiz that will tell you what kind of creator you are. I would love to hear what results you get. Your support means more than you'll ever know. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, Era, and today I have some awesome guests. They're part of a group called Bindi Bosses, all the way from Australia. I would do an Australian accent, but I can't. Their names are Shyamla and Ragavi. Shyamla is the founding director, and Ragavi is also just part of the team as well. Today, we're just going to kind of get into their story, kind of why Bindi Bosses was started, kind of some of the impact that Bindi Bosses has had culturally, telling social or like exploring social issues, and kind of get to know these two ladies as well. So why don't we start off by you guys telling us a bit about yourself, your family, your upbringing, and kind of why Bindi Bosses was started.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having us. This is, I think, the first podcast we've done with Bindi Bosses, so it's cool that it's international. Woohoo!
Ooh, that's awesome. You guys are my first podcast with guests from Australia, so there's a first.
Awesome. So speaking of Australia, one thing we always do is acknowledge the land that we're on. So we are currently coming to you from Darug Land, which is the name of the First Nations traditional custodians, and just acknowledging that the land we're on, sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So I guess, what was your question?
A bit more about yourselves and your upbringing.
Okay. So Raghavi and I have very different stories. I was born here in what is Australia. My father came out here during what was known as the White Australia policy, which was a overtly racist policy that prevented people of non-European descent from entering the country. So he was able to be here because his father was posted here. So he was here as a person of colour at a time where people of colour were prohibited from being in Australia. So that really formed, I guess, my upbringing, because that informed his choice not to teach language to me. So I didn't grow up speaking either Hindi or Tamil. Kind of got quite whitewashed. Whereas for Raghavi...
Yeah, so I was actually born in Switzerland, and I came here when I was about 6 years old, and yeah, my parents really wanted me to be able to have tradition and culture and language, so polar opposites, I guess. And yeah, I mean, I definitely grew up around an area where there was a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, and regardless of that, my parents were still like, you've got to learn Tamil. And then we ended up moving to an area where there was predominantly a lot of Tamil people. It felt like we were like back in a village. Everyone around was a Tamil. There was like Tamil food, culture. Yeah, you can walk down the street and everyone knew who you were. So
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty. Look, sometimes when you were a child, you felt like, oh my gosh, like I want to just have hip hop and you just do the things that I like normal people, I guess, would do around me. But I'm super grateful for it nowadays.
I was the same, actually. Like, for me, the place to find myself, because I grew up in an area called the Sutherland Shire, and it is very Anglo-Saxon. So even to this day, I mean, there's a lot more it's a lot more mixed, but even within Sydney, it's got a bit of a reputation for being this sort of one of the final bastions of white supremacy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was like literally the only Indian kid at school. I was the first one through of color, and I got bullied a lot for that.
Sorry, did you say Queensland?
No, so we were in New South Wales.
New South Wales. Okay. I thought it
Yes.
because I
City.
watched it. I watched an Australian movie. I thought it was called Queensland, and it was about kind of where the pockets of white supremacy were in
Oh,
Australia. So I thought that was it. Okay, so never mind. Go
wow.
ahead.
There's a
Yeah.
movie about that that's
Yeah.
made it to Canada. That's amazing.
It was an international film festival, so I think that's why it kind of came all the way
Very
down here.
interesting. I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, which obviously, yeah, meant that it was interesting though because my father was one of the first Indian families to actually migrate to Australia. They at that time, so this is in the 60s, they knew all the other Indian families
Mm.
and especially all the other Tamil families. So they would all get together and go to like the one spice shop together. And ironically, we're actually working with one of the women that my dad knew at that time, who is now a director of an art center,
Oh,
Bankstown Art
wow.
Center. Um, Shout out to Vandana Ram, who's very supportive of Bindi Bosses, and we rehearse there now. It's just crazy that intergenerational,
Full circle.
yeah, full circle and
That's
that cultural
cool.
connection and how strong I think it is, especially within the Tamil community.
Um, one of the things I'm curious about is so in doing TamilCulture.com, we've kind of learned, or I've learned about different pockets of Tamil diaspora communities across the world. So I didn't know there was like a big one in South Africa, Mauritius, New
Yeah.
Zealand. So I think in Toronto we take it very for granted how like densely populated the Tamil pockets are. Like it's crazy in a place called Scarborough, which is like Little Jaffna. Literally, like instead of like a normal grocery store every other block, there's like a Tamil grocery store. It's like so if you're someone that came from like say India or Sri Lanka and you moved to like Scarborough, you would feel right at home. So can you
Oh,
tell us a bit about kind of the Australian Tamil community? Like how is it? Is it like very densely populated in certain places, or is it sparsely like populated?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Australia is one of the most multicultural countries in the world. So we've got everyone, and they all seem to find their own community. So we've got an entire suburb where there's just Koreans that, densely populate that area, and Chinese, and same thing, Sri Lankans and Indians. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I grew up where there was a lot of, so there's a place called Homebush, where back in the day, everyone used to live around there. And then one by one, they started to migrate over to another area out west. And everyone decides to follow. So
mm,
I think it's because, like we like to be around our community, we like security, and it's just comforting. I know definitely for my mum was very comforting to come to a new country, having to, live in Switzerland before, learn so many different languages. Now she's got to learn a whole new language. She just wants to feel, comfortable and have other people around her that speak
mm.
Tamil, and have the culture around
Which
her as
which
well.
is really interesting because at the time that that was happening, I was in the little white pocket of Sydney, thinking that I was literally the only brown person in the whole of Australia. So I guess the metropolitan, like the city areas, and there's a huge and very incredible population in the western suburbs of Sydney. So that's kind of where the real Sydney is
Mm.
in terms of really strong culture and like unapologetic culture. Like people,
Mm.
are we allowed to swear on your podcast, by the way?
Yeah, you can definitely be as
Yeah.
real, be as real as you want to be, but hopefully not soaring all the time. But yes.
I just like you can really because at the moment I'm teaching in an area called Fairfield and there's just this vibe of like just do your thing like unapologetically. You're not trying to like fit in with I guess the white norms that have been laid out for us, and it's really great that the further west you go I feel like people give less of a shit about trying to fall in with like the white Australia
That's true.
idea, right? So the
Yeah.
deeper you go, it's just like, okay, I got to get my game face on now. I need to like get into a whole different mentality because it's
Yeah.
like different rules apply.
Yeah.
When somebody talks to you guys and asks you where you're from or like how you identify yourself, do you first say Australian or do you say Tamil or do you say Indian?
Uh, that is such a good question because that's a huge one that like everybody who's not white gets
Mm.
asked even if they've been here for generations. So, where are you from? When people say that, I first of all I correct them. I'm like, are you asking about my cultural ancestry?
Yeah.
First of all, just to make that point. And then they're like, yeah, 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 that's what I mean. Because if you say Australia, they'll say, where are you really from?
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
very frustrating. And I'm sure that probably happens. Does that happen in Canada, in Toronto, or not so much?
It's funny because the areas I've always grown up, I felt like white people were essentially minority groups. Like it
Uh,
was like,
you've got a big Caribbean population there as well,
Yeah.
don't
well,
you?
yeah, I mean, I don't want to like question what Ragavi's saying about Australia being one of the most diverse um, countries in the world, but I think Canada, specifically Toronto, is probably the most diverse. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Probably.
um,
I'm sure from what we've seen, yours is probably better integrated. I mean, Australia's a very young country
Yeah.
still, so we're still sort of getting our shit together on that front.
Mm.
But yeah, yeah. I mean, I say first, yeah. So I correct them. I say if you're asking about my cultural ancestry, my mother is from Fiji, my father is from India, my mother speaks Hindi, my dad speaks Tamil. I grew up, and it's hard as well because Australia in itself is a problematic term because it's a colonized term. So
Mm.
we're increasingly also as Bindi bosses trying to attach ourselves to the names of the traditional country that we're on. So Darug, Darawal, whatever it is, and educating ourselves on that basis rather than sort of attaching to the idea of Australia even because that is problematic.
Mm. Yeah. Well, with me, they try to ask me that question through my name. They're like, "Oh, Ragavi, that's interesting. Where does it come from?" And I just say it's a Tamil name. It comes
Mm.
from Sanskrit. Generally, people don't know where that is, and I go, "Okay, well, I'll go into a little bit more depth." So my parents are Sri Lankan Tamil. Yeah, but yeah, I get confusing ones because I've got curly hair as well. People don't really know where I'm from, but I'm so proud of being a Sri Lankan Tamil who
Yeah.
has
And
looks
and
like that.
and I think, meeting Raghavi's been awesome for me because I'm Tamil via like Chennai. So I didn't realize the differences. Ignorantly thought, because I grew up in such a white area and I didn't really understand the nuances that like all Tamils were kind of the same. And wow, really not.
no,
Yeah.
it's so interesting you kind of said that because I have friends or I know people that are Indian Tamil and they
Yeah.
always refer to themselves as Indian first versus I feel like it's a very Sri Lankan Tamil thing to refer to yourself as Tamil first. Like if somebody asks me
Yes.
what I am,
So
yeah.
true.
So,
My dad, you're so right. And I don't know if that's like a little bit of like lateral racism that's going on there either, because my dad would always be, whenever I'd mention him in the interviews and stuff and I'd refer to him as Tamil, he actually would say to me, could you please make sure that you say Indian Tamil, otherwise people will think I'm Sri Lankan. And I'm like, oh, what's wrong with that?
I think it's also that Tamils, at least the ones that I know or like kind of know in Toronto, don't like to identify themselves as Sri Lanka because of kind of all the issues associated with that.
Mm.
So I think it's like Tamil is like their primary identity. And then, yeah,
I think here, would you say that the identity is Sri Lankan Tamil? Like, would people ask? What
I
would
don't
you
know. It
say?
really depends on every person.
Mm,
And for myself, I don't mind because, my parents are very proud of being Sri Lankan Tamil. So that's how
mm.
they've raised me. But I know certain people definitely would be like, no, no, I'm just Tamil. I don't relate to my country. Which, yeah,
Yeah,
each to their own.
yeah.
Yeah.
now let me ask you the big question, which we haven't got to yet, which is why did you guys call the group Bindi Bosses?
Oh,
Ah. Raghavi and so I was putting together shows, doing kind of Bollywood gigs and stuff before Bindi Bosses, and it never really sat in 100% right with me because I didn't grow up traditionally. It did feel like I was kind of pandering to a Western notion of what Indian culture is. So before Bindi Bosses, I put on this show called the Desi Dance Experience. Actually, before that, no, was that Dance Through India was the first one? Dance
yeah.
Through India. So I just left a Bollywood performance company that I was in, and I was like exploring, and I wanted to do what my idea at the time was a very authentic show. So something that showcased like folk culture, so showcasing Punjabi roots and Gujarati roots, and showing the differences, and Rajasthan as well. We did Gumma. So I've done a lot of traveling to and from India just to educate myself and experience and train. And it was a great show. We did like Choli Ke Piche, but then added, and then Guma as well, and then ended with Bhangra and Dol. But then at the end, I was like, I've got this like kick-ass Afro dancer here. Ragavi and Jess is the other sort of original Bindi boss. We call us the OG BBs. And it was a great show, and like the audience loved it because it was a lot more sort of close to a folk and traditional route. But for us, I was like, I just feel like we're kind of sidelining all the other stuff that makes us amazing as artists so that we can try and fit this notion of authenticity.
Yeah.
So I originally had the chat and I called us Bindi Babes originally. That was the original thing. And we were just doing gigs. It wasn't like a formal company. We were just the name of the chat. And I don't know, first of all, I identify as non-binary, so I think babe just seemed very feminine to me and maybe not as inclusive. And I just literally woke up one morning, I'm like, I don't want to be a babe. I want to be, we're bosses. Like we're owning not just our styles, but we're sort of reclaiming the bindi, because a bindi was not something that I could grow up wearing. It was referred to as like, you look like you've been shot in the head. So, I grew up with bindi shame. So I think for me anyway, bindi.
Wait, somebody actually said that to you?
Oh, that's a very common. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And you look like, it's like a gunshot. And because you don't really grow up being told specifically what a bindi means, it's just part of your culture. You have to navigate and discover that for yourself. So once I did, I was like, oh my God, the meaning behind the bindi of like connecting to your ajna chakra and connecting to universal consciousness. It's got such a beautiful, deep meaning to it. I want to wear that with pride. So
I feel like there's a lot of things culturally that we're not actually explained to as children. We're just kind of told you do this and this and this. And whenever you ask why, you get a good backhand or like some kind
That's so true. I remember going to the temple and going, why do we walk around in this direction and this many times?
Yeah.
And my dad's just like, you just do.
Yeah.
So, but the difference is when you grow up in your country, I don't know if you know more or less, but it's more important when you're growing up removed from that cultural root that it is explained to you. And to be honest, I don't think my parents did a very good job of that. I feel like Raghavi's did.
Do you know what? It's the same situation. Like we're just told to do something just because, and you follow it. And funnily enough that you say that, because at the beginning of us starting Bindi Bosses as well, we were like, we have to start questioning why we do things in our culture, in our tradition, and why it's just the way it is, because they were probably made, hundreds of years ago by who knows who. We've got to see if it's really, if we can still have that kind of meaning in the modern context as well. And every time we come up with a new concept with the girls, we have intense conversations about whether we should do something. Okay, can that be, mended or molded? Can we break the rules around this?
Yeah.
And I think that's what Bindi Bosses became for me, at least, like constantly questioning.
I can give you an example. So in our first video, there are two aspects of it that you won't really see much of anymore. And the first was we are wearing sindoor in our part line. So we had to have a whole conversation around that, because obviously sindoor is quite a spiritual thing, and it's very much a sign of marriage as well. So I didn't mind wearing it because I was, I'm not that traditional or conservative, whereas Jess, for example, wasn't comfortable. She said, I don't really feel comfortable, because she's got that understanding of what that means. Even today, for example, Ragavi and I just had a discussion. When she came, I was like, oh, you're gonna, do you want a red bindi? And she said, but the red bindi is associated with marriage. I'm like, yeah, it's true, but it's also the Bindi Bosses brand. So in her outside of Bindi Bosses life, she's still it still plays out. So, that's why I've got a red bindi on today. Not that you can see it. And Ragavi's got a black one. But because I haven't grown up so steeped in that culture, I'm probably more willing to break traditions, because I haven't grown up being sort of, I guess, molded in that particular way. But you have to respect those different experiences. And that, we try to allow for that within Bindi Bosses, for example, when we do classical Indian dance, when we got new dancers who have done their Iron Getcham and are, very connected to their spiritual and artistic practice, they were very uncomfortable with doing certain movements with shoes on. And in our first video, you see we've got Sindhur in our part and, we're wearing shoes doing classical movements. I was fine with that at the time because my dear Kuchipudi guru, and his daughter was actually our stylist. However, just because I'm fine with it, I can't make all my company be fine with it. So they, one of the girls, and she's an amazing Bharatanatyam dancer, spoke up and said, I'm not really comfortable with this. And then we had a discussion around it. And we decided that, it's really important in the dance style that we do that we connect with the earth, because that's what it's about. It's about actually physically connecting with the earth as we practice. So you will notice that we don't really wear sneakers anymore unless it's an outdoor gig and we need to protect our feet. Yeah.
So I had a question around the kind of in the creative space. So I guess the first one I'll kind of go into is in the Tamil community, generally being in the creative arts, especially if it's kind of like something you want to make, want to say quote unquote full time, is kind of frowned upon. Based on kind of things I've seen, at least in the Canadian community, it's slowly starting to change. But have you found that kind of doing something like Bindi Bosses, do people in the community take what you're doing seriously? Like you guys, this is not like, I know it's like a passion, and I think you guys have made it more into kind of aiming to make it into a living, but is it something people take seriously, or is it kind of like people brush it off as like a hobby or just something you do for fun?
That's what's been so cool about Bindi Bosses. I feel like we've been so well respected and taken seriously, not just by, the South Asian community, but by other people of color, because they recognize what we're doing. They understand that struggle of going, okay, I've lived in both these worlds. How do I, successfully merge them and still be me and not feel like I have to be my full traditional self, but also be modern. So I feel like we've been quite restricted. I want to throw this to Ragavi because she's progressively been becoming more of a creative over the last few years. I've been self-employed as a creative for 7 years, but I think she's told me a few stories recently about her parents and how they've progressively sort of been more and more proud of her and her creative pursuits. So.
I guess, growing up in the Tamil family, they don't always consider. They want you to do the arts as a youngin. They want you to do the Vuna, the violin, Sangeetam, dance, Bharatanatyam, but like strictly traditional. And that's what I grew up with. I was very, very traditional growing up. But if any time that I wanted to do like drumming or hip hop, they were like, nope, cut that out. It's not going to happen. So when I was old enough, I started to do those things myself. And I think even as a society, we consume so much. We consume so many, things every day, like music, dance, but we don't think we can make a living out of it. Or when we see people that are dancers, we go, oh, you're just a dancer. Do you do that on the side? But I think more so now, I feel like when people ask me, they go, yeah, that's what you do. You're a dancer.
And I think there's also a cultural thing there where, our traditional arts were performed at temples. They weren't something that was to be monetized. So I think there's a cultural aspect to it as well of like, oh, you're making money off something that is worship, or that is taking elements of worship. So, I think it's important to just, that's why there's that responsibility on what we're doing to not just be entertaining and to never just pander to other people's idea of us, because we are in control of that, and there's a big responsibility not just for our cultures but for the cultural dances that we fuse to actually be aware and make sure that we're, when you do get money, when you receive income for something, you've got to make sure you've done the work and that you continue to do the work as well. It's an ongoing process. You can't just, take a few classes in something and then start teaching it. That's something we talk about as well a lot in Bindi Bosses. What do we have the right to teach? What do we have the right to perform? So every move that you see in our choreography, every dance move that we teach, there would have been a huge discussion around it because we do receive money for doing that, and with that comes responsibility.
And you know what's funny? You say that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
You know, either the Bharatanatyam or it's the flip side where it's Bollywood, and then think, you know, they go, oh, that's just a showy little thing. But yeah, I mean, it's taken a really long time for my parents to come around. I've had so many conversations with them. But
Because
now,
just so you know, she's got a background in forensic science.
so yeah, they were like, all right, you're going to be a forensic scientist, not a doctor. Okay, you're going to be, you know, in the arts as well. Okay, so it was really confusing for them because it's just so simple for when someone asks, oh yeah, she's just a doctor or an engineer. I think that's one of the reasons why parents want us to be that as well.
But that being said, I don't think my parents would have been comfortable with me doing what I did had I not got my bachelor's in communications and my master's in human rights law. And my dad will still go and tell people that I'm a human rights lawyer, which I am definitely not. Like, but yeah, I think, and for me, it's also been exposing the parents. So my mom's so good. She's like our biggest fan. She comes to all the workshops.
She's so cute.
She comes to the gigs. She like feeds us when we're going to do a shoot, and she's such a fan. And but it's taken time. Even with my very Western upbringing, it took a long time for my parents to realize that struggle that they had. So my dad's a Carnatic singer. So I grew up going to temples. He was performing, but it was never an option for him to make a living out of it. There was no living to be made.
Yeah.
And our parents, they basically, you know, they're coming from one country to another. Their role was very functional. They had to lay roots for us. So what I always try to remind my parents is, you know, you did that so I could have choices, you know, and by me living my passion by being a dancer or a writer or a choreographer or whatever, that's me, you know, being able to honor whatever sacrifices you made so that I can do what I want. So, you know, why would you want me to be an accountant? My whole family's accountants, by the way. Without them, I couldn't function my business. But but yeah, like I think it's an intergenerational thing as well, and just showing them that it can be done.
Yeah, and on the topic of kind of education and like using dance as a form of educating people, you know, you guys had that TEDx opportunity. Maybe talk a bit about that, how that opportunity came to be. What was the impact of you actually participating? And talk a bit about that.
Sure. So we were very blessed. I think I remember I got a call from Fenella, who said, hi, my name's Fenella. I'm the curator of TEDx. I've come across your work and we want to see you in our program this year, which was very exciting. And it was awesome because we really were guided in how to put that together in a way. And I think the coolest thing was it started off, she gave us freedom basically to do what we wanted and trusted us. And I think that's one thing I love when people come to Bindi Bosses, because of whatever they've seen us put out, they trust us. They don't try to tell us what to do. So it went from just being a dance performance to being, she said, do you want to say a few words at the beginning? And that became a whole spoken word piece, which is actually a standalone piece now that supports the dance that we did. And to create that standalone piece that with the spoken word, I actually engaged my entire team and I asked them to tell me, well, we had a little, we are nerds and we're brown, so there was a spreadsheet. And I said, what does dance mean to you? And I asked them all the questions that I wanted to put into the speech. So I highly recommend everyone go and check that out, because even though I'm speaking and I do speak from my lived experience, I integrated the experiences of, for example, my dancers who were born in Hyderabad, who've born in Malaysia, who, Switzerland, and then, has that history of Sri Lanka in their bloodlines. All of that actually it was a great process because we were able to go, okay, well, why do we dance? What is it? And the common thing is it's that one place where we can be free and the truest version of ourselves, and we can connect and we can express and we can connect with culture without having to talk or without necessarily needing the language of, the spoken word, which I don't have, which is why dance is so important for us. So I guess I know you asked about like what impact did that have on the audience. I think the impact that it had was whatever it was because I think they resonated with the authenticity of the place we were coming from and the fact that we weren't actually doing it for the audience at all.
If I were to add to that, I think I didn't ask it properly, but it was more like I know looking at kind of the work you guys do and how you use Bindi Bosses as a platform to speak about social issues. So you talked about, I know you're very heavy on, or put an emphasis on kind of Aboriginal like rights and issues. So I wasn't sure if like the dance had any kind of like beyond the dance itself, if it opened up conversations that you could have around other subject matters that you were passionate about talking about and engage like meaningful dialogue on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the actual piece that we did was 3 tracks. The first was Medicine by Baker Boy, who's a First Nations artist, and Jess B, who's a woman of color. And so that's why we wanted to open with that, because that was our way of saying, you know, we respect the land and, you know, we acknowledge the fact that all our experiences that are being had are being had on land where sovereignty wasn't ceded. So you know, that was part of the speech as well. We're saying, you know, we dance for so many different reasons. We dance to connect, we dance to reflect, we dance to forget some of our pain, we dance to remember, we dance to acknowledge, you know, traditional owners of the lands that we're on. We dance for all those reasons. And then the second part of it was was a kutu piece, right? Actually, you told me about this artist.
Yes, it was
Navs.
Patasu. Yeah, Patasu by Navs47.
I think she's Canadian. Yeah, she's awesome. I love her.
Oh, we're so like Navs and the last one was Cartel Madras.
Yeah. Cartel Madras is also Canadian. Indian.
Yeah.
Tamils, right?
You got something going. You're doing something right.
Yeah.
I told you Toronto is an awesome place.
Yeah. We'll tour there. It opens up. But yeah, I think, and yeah, it did. It brought up the ability to have lots of conversations. We've actually had a lot of gigs come out of that, and people who, really kind of understood what we were trying to put out there, and realized that we're trying to dance with a level of self-awareness and social consciousness. So yeah, I think we always have conversations within our group. It's funny, we talk as much about other things as we do about the actual dancing itself, around, you know, actually engaging with the stories of the artists of the music that we do. So we at the moment are working on a piece to Groovy by Barker, who is an incredible, watch this space, man. She's just so insanely, like, there's so much wisdom and trauma and joy and history and culture that just comes out of her performances. But
is she First Nations as well?
Yeah, she's First Nations. So one of the things that I've said to the girls is when we've started choreographing, but, you know, Barker did a podcast and her mother is Stolen Generations. So I asked my dancers to actually listen to those things so that they understand the stories behind the music that we create, to not just, you know, as dancers, we're all guilty of it. We just get moved by a beat. Like, I don't really know what they're saying, but I'm just going to move. This makes me want to move. So we always try to go that extra step to engage with the lyrics and to understand from not just that artist's point of view, but also on a wider cultural context, what that piece means, and make sure we're doing justice to it with what we're blending to it through dance.
And, you know, I guess related to kind of education, but what's your stance on social media in general, like from a personal point of view, as well as like from a Bindi Boss's point of view? I'll tell you my stance. So I look at social media as a tool. It's like a car. It can be used for good or bad. It's really kind of up to the user. And I would say it's really up to the user. So I think of it as a tool. Do you agree or not agree, or like, just what's your stance on that?
Sham, you can go first. Your social media experience.
Did I hit a hot button or a hot topic between you guys?
You will notice that I no longer have a personal Instagram account, which So originally, I used social media to find my voice as a brown woman who didn't have brown women growing up, and to connect with other brown women from around the world. So a big part of that process for me, so this is going back maybe 3 years, was to sort of, publicly talk about what I'd been through and my experience. And I needed to do that at that time. But then for me, it got to a point, I think the more you put yourself out there, and unfortunately it can happen, within any community, and you get some level of recognition or public acknowledgement, there can be what we call in Australia tall poppy syndrome, can open you up for criticism or people going, oh, but you haven't done this and you haven't done that. And I think for us, I always bring it back to talk from a place of your own lived experience. And don't reach too far beyond that. So whatever causes you engage with, support it from a place of, you having done your own work and not expecting others to have done that or telling other people what to do. I think social media, it can be a very powerful tool for connecting. I think it can also be an extremely damaging tool for self-esteem, and a huge factor in lateral violence, because you're not actually having to have a face-to-face interaction with someone. You're just firing words across at them and making judgments based on what is essentially a curated version of a person's life. We only post what we're comfortable posting, right? So yeah, for me, for that reason, I've actually, one of my team, I handed over the management of Bindi Bosses social media to our youngest team member, Divya. I've personally needed to take a break from it just because I didn't like what it was doing to my mental health. And as an artist as well, it really takes you away from your practice and your center. So for me, it's important to stay grounded. But it's a great place to showcase, I guess, the work that you're doing, and to get a sense of things and to connect with your community on a global scale.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely what I liked. I love social media. I absolutely adore it. I get to people. I mean, we would have never found out about Navs 47 or.
Well, I wouldn't have found Ragavi. I found her through.
True.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys that too. How did you guys meet? But we'll talk about
through Instagram. I was trying to figure her out. I'm like, who is this curly-haired, kind of South Asian, but I'm not sure looking little pocket rocket who can do dancehall and afro, and every now and then I see her in a pic with a bindi. I don't understand her. What's the deal?
That's what I love about the social media aspect, because I had no one like that growing up. I was a very confused child. I was like, okay, there's all these, white faces on TV, but no one really in the media that looked like me. So I always wanted the straight hair, the quiff. I wanted to be tall.
Oh my God, we have to show you photos of Ragavi from school.
Yes, please.
Embarrassing. Please don't go back there.
If you compare it to this like gorgeous thing you're seeing now, it's like, and I say it, I did the same thing. I've still got burn marks from where I used to like iron my hair straight. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just didn't have anyone that looked like me, so
you try to mimic what you see around you to try and fit in. Yeah.
And now I get to pick and choose who I want to follow on social media, and it's my own version of TV. I don't even watch TV anymore. I don't watch YouTube. I just Netflix and Instagram.
I Netflix.
Yeah.
Netflix is now.
But addictive. I completely understand. Like, I work with young people all the time, and they look at it and I mean, the filters nowadays are crazy as well. So.
Oh, let's not get into that's a whole thing. I find the filters quite problematic. I feel like that. Yeah.
And look, one of the reasons, like, when we do post anything on Bindi Bosses, is very inclusive. We want people to feel like they're part of the team and want to be part of the team in a way. Coming to workshops. That's how we not promote. That's not what we're really doing. We're just showing, hey, this is what you can be doing out in the world as a South Asian.
And I think it's an access point for people. Like, we're pretty responsive on the socials. I'm generally the one that replies to anybody who slides into the DMs. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I find Facebook a bit weird. I just feel Facebook's a bit weird now and overwhelming. Don't quite understand.
I think people go to Facebook just to I go there just to read articles. It's pretty much a curated news feed. One thing I would add about social media based on your comments, Shyamla, is, and I was thinking about it before, was I guess for me, it's easy to say it's just a tool because I'm like an older person that's kind of mature and I have experiences under me. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's like kind of like financial literacy. I feel like there should be some kind of course or like, training for young people, like really young people, like, kids around how to use social media responsibly. Like you said, there's people that are kind of getting surgeries to look like their filtered version on social media, which is
Yeah.
crazy. So yeah, I agree with you.
Talking about this, how
Yeah.
young people have to be not taught, but just, yeah, just taught how to, when to. And I do study skill sessions with students, and their biggest procrastination point is Instagram. They get on there for 2 hours, they're on there 4 hours.
It's so easy to do though.
It is really easy. And I'm like, look, 3 years ago, 5 years ago wasn't an issue, but nowadays it is a huge issue. And it's so new. So people don't know how to deal with it. People think it's normal. And it's so not. It's really,
And
really
and
not.
I've noticed, I feel like people's in-person skills are suffering as a result of social media. Like they're really good at firing off words, and doing a cool looking sort of layout story. And but then yeah, but there's been a lot of people I've met that I've sort of connected with on social media, but I've been surprised in person. And a lot of the time it's very quiet personalities that can come across in a very big way on social media. So I think there just needs to be a balance, because for me, I'm all about in-person energy and connection. Like Raghavi, both of our work involves working with kids, doing hands-on workshop experiences, going out, and around to different regional areas and around Australia. So for me, yeah, socials tool definitely, but a tool that has to be very carefully managed. And I think the best way to manage it on a personal level is to just keep checking in with yourself about how it's making you feel,
Yeah. Who
right?
you're following, what you're doing, what you're watching, what you're taking in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and how is that being a benefit to you? If education's always great, but at some point it's good to actually have a real life conversation with someone
Well,
about the thing.
well, also like as you're talking, one of the negative impacts I would say of social media, and this is just anecdotal evidence, is
Yeah.
people that, like you said, do well with social media. It impacts not even friendships, but like I've seen people that like I've had friends that have gone on dates and like it's like they have strong like social media or like through messaging apps, really good conversations, but then when you meet, there's like
Yeah, right.
there's
That's what I'm
no
talking about.
Damn.
there's no ability to kind of connect or have like a conversation. It's super awkward. So I can see
Mm.
that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess it's hard, right? In this COVID world that we're living in now,
yes,
Mm.
yeah.
it, it's hard to meet up and do things in person. So yeah.
Um, one of the things I'm like one of the things I always like I'm very curious about is people's future intentions. So it feels like like a job interview question, but I'll ask it. You know, what's like something that you like to do, or like where do you guys see yourself, maybe individually and collectively as Bindi bosses in the next 3 to 5 years?
Look, someone recently asked me this question, and I said that I hated answering this question. I'm amazing when it comes to day to day, week to week, month to month. As soon as you say years, I'm like, I have no effing clue. I don't want to think about it. As long as I am on, I've always got an intention. So my intention is to make a difference to young people, somehow, some way. And as long as I'm doing something around that, I am so happy. I'm not someone who wants a big house. Of course, like that would be nice, but that's not the intention that I want in my life. But yeah, I mean, every year is always different. If I feel like I also don't want to set myself up for this thing that I may not want in 6 months. I change up my clothes every year. Like I get sick of things every year. So I just don't trust myself
Yeah.
to want something for 3 to 5 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like Raghavi. I mean, I've been a self-employed creative, mostly working with dance for about 7 to 8 years now. And one thing I've learned, and my partner's a musician, that's been his job his entire life. He's a kick-ass. Shout out to Jonathan. Hi, JP, we love you. He's so Bindi Bosses. He's like our security guard for gigs and stuff too. And
Oh,
like, yeah, he's just the best. But he helped me to really understand the need to be present and to not attach. And it
mm,
doesn't mean you can't plan, but just being careful of that word want,
mm,
as well, because I like what you said, Raghavi, because I feel the same. I feel like my goals are very based on purpose, not on
yeah.
external things. So for me, I want to feel like I'm creating space that maybe I didn't have when I was growing up. I want to feel appreciated. We all do. And I want to feel heard and seen by my peers that matter to me. And I want to feel like I'm connecting and coming across, and maybe that the final thing is, I guess, inspiring people. But I think one of the things that always stuck with me is some mates with Poss from De La Soul, and I remember when I first met him, I asked him about his process, and just their music has had such a huge impact, and he said we were never trying to make an impact, we were just trying to express ourselves. And I think that always stuck with me, because if you really just always do you, and you know who you are and what drives you, and you make that your goal, then you're never really going to fail. And then if COVID hits or all these other crazy things happen, you can still find ways to live out your purpose. So um, in terms of Bindi Bosses, tangible things, I guess we're really trying to collaborate with other South Asian artists. We want to do things in different ways. We're really keen to make our show more of a live set, incorporating different elements. Putting together a stage show is something that we're very excited to
That
do.
would be cool.
Touring is something
Yeah.
we'd love to do, if not globally, then at least around Australia. Actually, ideally Australia, just to understand the land that we're all living on a little bit more.
Oh, come to
Mm.
Toronto.
Oh,
Uh,
we're there. We are dying to get there. That would be amazing. And especially just because yeah, it just seems like you've got really strong pockets of culture in
yeah.
Toronto as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
You have do you have quite a big like a Jamaican quite a big Jamaican community,
Huge. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I would love that.
Yeah, so
Oh
our
my
dance hall
gosh.
girls would just go
Oh,
nuts.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Um, I had a question as you guys were talking about the touring, but I'll get back to it. I'll go into like a different side. So what's an insecurity that you guys both have individually?
Mm.
Um, I guess, and this was something that sort of came up through social media, is I think there's a lot of pressure now to be woke, and people in the process of doing that can get quite judgmental of other people. And I think for a long time, like I was being quite vocal about my views, and then, that always opens you up to criticism. So I had to sort of step back and go, how much should I actually be telling other people what to do and how to feel and what is right and wrong? And how much do I actually need to figure that out for myself and just live that truth through my actions? So, in terms of insecurity, yeah, I guess you never want to be sort of misunderstood for your intentions, and just being open to the fact that we're always learning and we're always decolonizing, and that
Mm.
process happens at different times for different people. I'm 37. How old are you now?
28.
28.
Yeah.
So Bindi Boss is amazing. So we've got
Mm.
so between Raghu and I, they're like 10 years between us.
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
are.
God. Ugh.
Doesn't even feel like it.
But then we've got women in their early 20s as well.
Yeah.
There's that intergenerational sort of exchange that's happening there. So we really try to check in with each other, I think, around, expectations around social media, and just managing that and
Mm.
going, hey, girls, I know that, followers don't equal like status, and
Mm.
followers don't mean shit. They really don't. I mean, it's cool and it's exciting, but social media is, it's kind of like this game. It's just
Yeah.
this game where if you're sick of playing it, you can literally delete the app and it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
um,
sure there's a Black Mirror episode like that.
totally, there
Oh,
would be.
for sure, definitely. I'm sure there is. Yeah. I was gonna say you don't look you don't look a day over 25. I'm 37 as well, and I'll say we both don't look a
I'm older. I'm like, I don't think you know how old I am.
um
But it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's important, just because you get older, you don't get less insecure. You just get more sure of your boundaries and your lines, and who to allow yourself to be vulnerable around. So I think I have a problem where I'm a very open book, and I can tend to just be me around everyone, which sounds lovely, but the flip side of that is when people aren't the same, or they, are coming at you with a different intention or a different agenda, they can misunderstand you, and that can really hit hard and hurt. And, I've experienced that in the last year. So I've just learnt to manage my world, and to just be very careful with my energy into who I invest that in, and where I draw those boundaries and lines. And I think the more you do that, the less insecurity seeps in, because you're just sort of, I guess, taking control of your own life and your own headspace as much as you can.
For me, I when I was growing up, I was a insecure little girl. I was total opposite of what I am right now. Beat down for like 20 years, heavily bullied. So when I came out of school, I was, like a little mouse. People don't actually remember me from school. I bumped into high school friends in quotation marks, and I'm like, you remember me? And they're like, oh, not really. But
do you hold up the picture of you with the straightened hair?
Shut up.
And go.
I want to use that photo for marketing purposes. So.
No. It was a bun with braces, glasses, long skirt.
Were there colored contact lenses?
I had
as
blue
well?
colored contacts, because I thought that would be cool with my braces and glasses as well.
Wow.
It was a whole look. Anyway, I think my insecurity it probably is falling back into always feeling small, because for me, dancing was the one thing that when I got out of school and I started doing hip hop, dancehall, Afro, I was like, damn, I'm really owning myself. I'm really owning my body, not letting anyone else tell me how I should feel. And I've done so much personal development, so I'm really introspective as well. But my insecurity is probably falling back into feeling like I'm nothing. And that's how I really felt when I was younger.
You're not nothing. You're everything. But it's true. Actually, it's so funny that I didn't answer this way. And the reason I didn't answer what I'm about to say now is because of Bindi Bosses. So for me, it's been feeling like a cultural fraud, because I carry the appearance so obviously of being South Asian, and specifically people can just pick me as Tamil straight away. But because I don't have language, I've always felt like a coconut. So culture in itself, and my connection with it, and my expression of it, and the way I, try and speak certain words, that's a huge place of insecurity for me. And the fact that I didn't even think to answer that is because I've got this group of 7 other fucking amazing women who, Gujarati, Malaysian, Sri Lankan, Sinhalese, like all different walks of life, all different South Asian backgrounds. And we all just support each other. Like, I love that in Bindi Bosses rehearsal, there'll be Hindi words thrown around now. And I feel like I have a safe space to actually be South Asian. So yeah, I think that's a big thing as well. Just culturally feeling insecure.
What do you guys like to do for fun outside of work, per se?
Have you seen what we do? What we fun. This was the hardest question. When we saw this, I'm like, I don't know how to answer this.
I have literally not. I think there was one year where I worked an office job and I absolutely hated it. But everything else that I do is not work for me. It's fun. I work then 7 days a week. I don't really stop.
Exactly. And I'm not mad at that either.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We don't drain ourselves.
No, we do. We get to a point where I'm like, I haven't slept for 6 days. And then I was like, when was the last time I had a day off? Oh yeah, that was a month and a half ago. I should probably stop.
Yeah. But together as Bindi Bosses, we love food. I mean, we're dancers. We're dancers. So we get hungry really quickly. We'll go out. We'll have something South Asian, whatever it is. We just absolutely love food. That's our...
Food is fun.
Yeah. Food equals fun.
That is universal.
Right?
Yes.
I'm just thinking what else. I mean, Netflix for me, certain programs, and yeah. It doesn't sound very exciting because we get so much out of our Like for me, Bindi Bosses is actually my socializing as well. I live in a regional area, kind of in the bush. So whenever we do gigs, I get that fix of like connecting with people, feeling communal energy. And, you know, that's the funnest thing. And I think what Raghavi said is really important because I don't know about, I'm pretty sure it's the same. I don't have a concept of retirement.
Mm.
So, and that's very different to our, you know, our parents as well. So I plan to, in some way, shape or form, keep creating, keep being involved in dance till the, you know, as long as I can. So I guess, yeah, what we do for fun is live our best life through our career.
I think with retirement too, I think my definition is similar to yours in the sense that it's not like the German constructed like work like definition of retirement, which is like you stop literally working at 65. It's
Yeah.
like I think the new age, and I think more and more people are adopting this, is retirement is essentially doing what you want when you want. So it's like you could technically still be working, like working, but really you're doing what you love. So you don't feel like you're working. So I feel like for me, I want to like retire when I'm 40 or 45, but it's not to do nothing. I want to, there's other
Mm.
stuff I want to do that I like. I enjoy what I do now, but there's other things. I think life's about cycles, right? Like there's some things you want to do for a bit and then there's other things you want to try. So
Yep.
that's kind of, yeah.
I can't do the 3 to 5 year plan because
No.
constant cycle every 6 months.
In terms of Bindi Bosses, and this is like we rehearse every Monday night, you know, no matter what, whether we've got a gig or not. The last Monday rehearsal we had, and like, you know, COVID has massively impacted our families. We have our youngest team member lost her grandmother and her uncle within like 2 weeks, both
Wow.
on her mother's side. So her poor mother has lost her mother and her brother, you know, and all of us have been affected or know someone who's been affected in some way. So on Monday, we just got together. It was the first time we didn't have to. We had a really busy April with gigs, and it was the first rehearsal that we had in a long time where it was just for us, and we just created. And oh my gosh, that was so much fun. We were just like screaming and yelling and going, "Oh my gosh, that's such a great idea! Yes, let's do this, let's do this!" And you know, it's self-generated. No one's telling us to put out a concept video or to do this. Like that's all coming from us wanting to create and to connect with each other. And that's why I love that I'm not the choreographer anymore. Like initially I choreographed a few of the first pieces that we did, but it was always my vision to open it up and make it an entirely collaborative process so that you didn't know who did what and that it was genuinely a team effort. And all the stuff of ours that has popped off, it's been that stuff that, you know, because you can feel it. There's something different when you can feel you've got a different connection to it as well when you're performing it, when you know that you've had a stake in it. You're not just doing dances that someone else has put on your body. You've been a part of that process. So for us, I think that's the most fun thing in the world is to look at all our dance languages and figure out where they intersect and who we can highlight at different moments and how we can support them at different moments. That's all fun to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super. Yeah.
From like a learning perspective, is there like a book or podcast that you guys have either read or listened to in the last, I would say, year or two that's had an impact on you?
I'm constantly listening to so many different things, and it's a lot of the times it's personal development stuff. So I listen to a lot of Tom Bilyeu, Lisa Bilyeu, Jay Shetty, love them. But yeah, I find it really hard to sit down and read a book. But for some reason, whenever I sit down and read a book, I keep going back to Anne Frank for some reason.
That's weird that you say that. I was really moved by that in school too.
Yeah, I've read it probably 4 times in my life. I love it so much.
That's so weird that you
So
say that.
What
Yeah.
what about Anne Frank specifically got you to read the book 4 times?
I don't know. I think because like maybe she just I connected with her in feeling trapped. Obviously, she was in a completely different period and she was going through so much more horrific, more of a horrific situation than I was. But I loved her story. And look, damn, she didn't have a great ending. But I feel like, okay, maybe it is this. I'm just coming out with this on the spot as well. Maybe I'm feeling like I'm actually living out what could have been out of coming out of that situation. Because I really, really did feel trapped. I felt like as soon as I finished school, what am I going to do with my life? I was definitely not, smart enough, I guess, to be a doctor, engineer, da da da. And I felt like I was just going to go downhill until I discovered personal development and a different mindset and a different way of thinking. So yeah, I'm constantly listening to podcasts. I mean, I just literally finished Oprah Winfrey's. Oh, I forgot what it was. It's one of her books that I audio booked. But yeah, that's what I'm constantly listening to.
Wow, that's cool. You just reminded me, when I was in school, I was like really into Sylvia Plath. She's so like, as a poet. Did you have to study her?
Yeah, we did.
It was so dark.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, you just remind that. For me, recently Untamed, like Glennon Doyle, I'm really interested in queer writers. I find they come from a much more intersectional perspective that I can learn from as well. White Feminism by Koa Beck is something that I've been really, I guess trying to wrap my head around and understand how, what we understand as feminism is actually not serving women of color, and how it needs to be sort of reimagined. On a fun note, I used to love listening to Infinite Monkey Cage podcast, which is a science.
Really?
Yeah. Brian, how have I forgotten his name? Brian, the one that looks, Brian, what's his name? His name's Brian something. I've forgotten it. I'm the same as Ragavi, so I don't like to physically read. Which is ironic because I write and I edit things, but maybe that's why. But I audiobook all the time, especially because I always toured a lot. So for me, Infinite Monkey Cage. And I have been like getting through Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, all 4 books. And I'm just absolutely, like, I just love it. I love sci-fi. I love like the Magician series by Lev Grossman. I love being like whisked into another world entirely that's like full of magic and
that's so Shyamla.
Yeah.
Stop.
I like going other places in my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me.
I feel like the stuff I read is so boring compared to what you guys, or not read, but listen to. I read like a lot of biographies. Like I love reading about anything that's like a story about somebody that has a hard knock life that has like made it in some way. So
That's not boring. That's
it's not,
inspiring.
but I feel like the stuff you guys just talked about is like way more. I guess I'm not into like fiction at all, except for Harry Potter. I mean, who doesn't? But like I'm into like that's like the only fiction I've ever written.
Harry Potter, you've got to check out The Magicians by Lev Grossman. It is amazing. It is so cool. It's like Harry Potter, but not for kids.
Harry Potter. The last 3 Harry Potter books were not for kids, I'll say that. But another question I want to kind of get into was personal legacy. So if you guys individually were to kind of ask, friends and family of like your ideal way of being described or being remembered, what would that be?
I feel like I've already said this, and it's just my motto. How I really do want to make a difference to young people and teens. So as long as I've done that and I've had a butterfly effect somehow, and someone's gone out and done something amazing and I've inspired them to do that, I would be so grateful.
Yeah. And for me, it's pretty similar. Like I want to continue creating safe spaces for people through dance. And when I say people, I teach very young trans students, non-binary, queer, people of color. And I really want to understand how to be more intersectional in my approach to that, so that I can be more aware of how to be more accessible and inclusive to people with different abilities. So I'd love to be known as someone who was able to successfully create genuinely intersectionally inclusive spaces where people could feel free to navigate, investigate, explore, and express themselves. I guess I'd love to be known as someone who is generous in terms of sharing opportunities with the people around me. and supportive, and yeah, definitely creating those safe spaces for other, especially brown women that I didn't have growing up. Yeah, if someone said I did that, I'd feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. And for me, I'm a happy person. If people remember me as a happy person, great, amazing.
That's true, actually. Like, just on an interactional level, I want people to feel energized by an interaction,
Yeah.
not drained. You
Yeah.
know, you can feel it, and I think that's what's common with all of us at Bindi Bosses. Like,
I was just thinking that.
actually, the thing is, I can't actually sleep after our rehearsals, so they know because they'll get messages from me up to like
3 a.m. She'll be up at 3 a.m. messaging us.
Not everyone, just who I know is still awake. Because I get so jacked up on the energy of it. And it doesn't matter what we've done. My brain just goes into overdrive and I can't focus on anything else. And so that's something I actually need to manage, which is why I, now.
But to be honest, a lot of us are like
that. Are you
that.
like that as well?
Yeah. No, I think it's just a general dancers thing. So, like, you feel like you've just done 2.5 hours, 3 hours of rehearsal. You would think they would go home and be so tired. But we're so like energized. I'm like, damn, that was such a good rehearsal.
That's true. And when I was growing up, I used to like train, because I've been dancing since I was 4, going to like weekly dance classes, and I would like do back to back maybe 3 hours of like tap, of what else, contemporary, of like JFH as it was called at the time, and this is physical sweaty dancing. I mean, Bindi Bosses, a lot of time we're having discussions and it's not always hardcore. So you think you'd be physically spent. I'd go home, cane a 1 liter bottle of water, and go up to my room and just keep dancing.
Yeah.
And dance is amazing. It's like, it's an obsession.
Yeah.
You like.
More people should do it.
It's so good.
Yes.
Please dance.
I'll add 2 things there. No, I was going to just say, one of my not insecurities, but like one of the things I wish I could do was dance and sing, because I'm not creative at all.
So to add to the list, the other thing that we are so passionate about is creating a space for people like you who feel like, I can't dance. It's like everyone can dance.
I'm stiff, okay, but I'm pretty sure, but I'm sure I could learn, but I wish I could dance. Yeah.
And so much of that like transcends the physical. It's actually about having someone be able to guide you and to go into yourself and your deepest self, and then come from that place and let your body be the tool, you know?
Did you guys grow up with a lot of American movies? Like I felt like there was like this stage in my like upbringing or like teenage years where there was a lot of like dance related movies, like Step Up or like Save the Last Dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like I grew up with that, and I was like, I can't do any of that. I felt like useless. But anyways, that's one of my insecurities.
I was trying to mimic Prabhudeva and just completely failing. Was my inspiration growing up, so
like my biggest inspiration, like music wise, dance wise, has been like the likes of like Janet Jackson, but especially Missy Elliott.
Yeah.
She's not known for being a dancer, but oh my gosh, I was just so moved every time I'd see her like busting out in her own videos, because dance is a groove, like it's a feeling.
It's self-expression.
It's a self-expression. It's not moves. Like you can see, and I see it all the time when I teach kids. They just, when your wildness comes out, that's what dance is. When you allow your wildest self to manifest, it doesn't matter what that looks like. Like that energy that you generate in doing that is what is the joy of dance, that then makes everybody else around you want to find that within themselves as well.
I think you made a comment earlier about one of, like, for both of you, like, you either want people to feel happy or energized if they interact with you. You guys both definitely have very high energy, even though like we're digitally communicating right now. Very high energy.
So yeah, we use our hands a lot. So
yeah, and we both got big eyes.
Yeah.
Because I would say I wouldn't say low energy, but I'm like very even keeled like most of the time. Like something crazy could be happening around me, I'm still like even keeled, versus I feel like you guys are.
We need people like you to balance up. You see my partner, he's literally in every way the opposite of me. He's like really, he's big and he's solid and he's quiet and he doesn't talk much and he's very measured and he's calm and he never sinks too low or flies too high. Like
same.
We need people like that to like, pull us back down to earth every now and then.
I think you need both kinds of groups or both kinds of people in any group or like relationship. I think if you had two of the same people, I think it would kind of get boring. So,
That's a good point. We do have that balance
yeah.
Yeah.
within the group. We've got some, yeah, some of us are a bit more grounded, but everyone has this fire in them that comes out.
In their own
That's
way.
the common thing. And that's just not us. Everybody, every single human has that fire in them. And dance is, for me, I think even more than music, like both of us grew up playing music. Like I used to sing and play guitar and play drums, but there's something about dance which is just, it's got this wider parameter for you to just kind of unleash your inner wildness. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That's a good segue to the last question, which is, what's a piece of advice that you guys would give to your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there?
It's a big one.
For me, I would say probably what I had to tell myself, which was don't be ashamed. Go out there, learn your heritage, learn your traditions, learn your culture, interpret it in your own way. That's completely fine. Question it. That's probably one of the things that steered me away from learning about my culture, that I was like, well, none of this makes sense. I don't care for it. And I distanced myself from it for a really long time because I just didn't want, no one wants to really be told what to do, right? So when I got to go back and research and do my own study and, ask more questions, it came from a different light. And I'm super appreciative of my parents for allowing me, for not allowing, basically forcing me as a child to like really know where my roots are from. And now it's a better conversation with them when I get to sit down and go, okay, well, what does this mean? What do you know about it? And sometimes they're even learning from me.
Yeah, definitely.
That's my connection with them, which is, it's great. It's amazing. It's authentic.
For me, I think I would want to say to people, own your heritage and your relationship to it, whatever that is and however tenuous you may feel that is. One thing with Bindi Bosses is we've been increasingly working with mixed race South Asian artists, and I really feel for them because they've got these fractured identities. I guess I especially feel for them because my partner is South African, so he's no more than 1/8 of anything. And I think we all need to just first of all, consider all the levels of our privilege through an intersectional lens. So whether that's because of our caste, our skin, our gender, our physical ability, our ability to even speak a language. Because I think the more we reflect on that, the more inclusive and opening, the more we open up space for the rest of the community. And that's what we need. We need to be more inclusive as a community. I would say limit the energy that you give to critics and naysayers, like know where to draw those boundaries. And I saw something, I actually sent it to the girls recently, of Missy Elliott, and she was saying, when I think of how many people thought I was crazy back then and what I went through to break that wall down, and I look at my videos now and how they've changed the game and allowed people now to be different in this era, if I'd listened to those people, no one would have ever seen those masterpieces. So don't be ashamed to feel like you need to mute people, pull back your energy from, the people that maybe aren't helping you achieve what you think you want to achieve. But it doesn't mean don't listen. Like listen, but just know where to draw those boundaries. And like I'd say this to every creator, like just dance. Like don't dance to perform, but dance is like such a visceral way to connect with your cultural practice and to heal and to express and to maintain and strengthen your connection. And for those people who have language, as someone who doesn't, maintain and strengthen your connection with it. Language is everything. Ragavi and I have that conversation all the time. I kind of look at her with envy as she, rattles off some little Tamil phrases here and there and corrects my pronunciation. I'm like, oh, if only I could. So like be proud of that.
There's something about being or speaking a language that no one else understands around you. So like when I went with my wife and like some friends, we went to like different places, and if we want to like say something so nobody else understood, it was cool to kind of speak Tamil and like nobody could like, except for like the four of us, nobody can kind of understand what we're saying. Like if we're trying to like negotiate or like figure out if this person was shady, like it was really cool. So I definitely agree with that. I want to ask you guys a random question as you guys are talking about connection with heritage. I'm very proud of like my heritage now, but I wasn't always that way because I remember when I was younger, I would get food, like my parents, like my mom would make something that was like Tamil, and I was always kind of ashamed to kind of eat it in front of other people, even though now it's like I don't care, like my this food's amazing, I'll eat it anywhere. But I always remembered, and then when I look back, I feel ashamed of that, where I was ashamed to like eat my food at school. Like I wouldn't eat like my lunch. I would wait till after school or something, eat it before I
No
went home.
your shame. It wasn't your fault.
I
Like,
know, I know.
I you know,
Yeah.
your environment made that response happen. That resonates with me entirely. I went to school with roti parcels and, fingers stained with turmeric, and, the kids would be like, that's disgusting. And next thing I know, I'm like, I want a Devon and tomato sauce sandwich. Do you know what Devon is?
No, I don't.
No one does.
What is
Devon,
it?
Devon is like, you don't even know what it mostly is. It's like bits of pork and beef, and
Oh, it's like spam. They call that spam in the US. Yeah.
it's like
It's
spam.
oh
Like
my God.
exactly, I exactly did that. So yeah, don't be ashamed of your shame. Like under, understand, instead of being ashamed of your previous shame, understand why you were made to feel that way and zoom out and go, what was happening?
Mm,
And, spend some time trying to sort of understand that, because then you'll go, oh, wow, like it helps you to just go, okay, that actually wasn't my fault. Anybody put in that situation would have had that response. And then it helps you to be more compassionate for people who may not be on the same part of, the
mm.
journey, or even on the same path that you are, and going, well, that's where they're at. I don't know what their life experiences have been that have led them to maybe not want to resonate with this or that. And it just, yeah, don't
It,
judge them.
it's really
Yeah,
funny because like with food, I feel like you talk about colonization. I feel like with food, as gentrification kind of happened in the city, and like white people are moving into areas that used to be, a lot of people of color. It's funny because like I eat like the same thing I used to eat as a kid that I was ashamed of. It's like you
that's cool.
have you
Yeah.
have people like of, I want to say white people, but like people from all over the world kind of like eating it like proudly, like it's like this like experience for them, like this amazing authentic experience. So it's kind of like a unique 180, but yeah.
It is. It's an
Yeah.
interesting one though, isn't it? Because it's like, well, you get to be proud and have this cultural experience of something that I was made to feel ashamed of. So
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
got to kind of, yeah, find that place within yourself where you bury that, not bury, but you like sort of deal with that.
Yeah.
There's a bit of bitterness. I feel the same. I'm like, oh, what? So now my culture's cool when it
Yeah.
serves you. But
Mm.
when
Yeah.
I was growing up, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I think, look, Australia's it's a very problematic country in terms of race and race relations. So every single person of color would have experienced a form of racism at some point in their life, whether or
Mm.
not they were conscious of it. So it's just about how to find peace within yourself, I think, so that you understand why that is.
Yeah, and I think thing about racism as well is I always make it like I generally when I speak about it, it's like a white person thing, like white people have done to people of color, but people of color do it to each other as
Oh,
well. So yeah,
it's the worst, yeah.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
I keep going back to the judgment. Like, I really want to, because I grew up feeling very judged by all my South Asian peers. So I grew up without them. Then when I went to uni, I remember there's this group of Fiji Indians, and I'm Fiji Indian, and I walked past them. I can't speak the language. They saw me with a group of white people and made an assumption about me.
mm,
Yet I just felt like, oh my gosh, I would love to be standing there with you and chattering away in Fiji Hindi, but I can't.
Mm.
So it's really important. We are all products of colonization. We've all migrated in different waves, and that impact has been different for each generation. So you really shouldn't get to like judge someone else on where they are in that journey. Or
Mm.
yeah, that's something that I know I've said this a million times, but I just think it's really important. That's been a real key learning for me as well.
okay. Well, that's a good way to segue into the fun part of the discussion. So it's a game that I like to call Creator Confession. So basically, I'm going to ask you guys a bunch of like hot fire or like it's a quick round or a speed round, sorry. And you're going to
Yeah.
kind of say this like the first thing that kind of comes to mind. So Um, the first one is favorite Tamil food.
Oh, I can say Faluda. Is that Tamil?
Faluda.
I don't know if that's Tamil.
You're
No,
asking the wrong person. I don't know. I don't think so. It isn't. I don't think so, but yeah.
that's like it's like Persian. It's like
No.
it's because of Sri Lanka, but
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, no. That's from
I'm
that's
claiming it. I'm sorry.
uh for me. I don't know if Poli is Tamil. Do you know Poli? It's this.
We say Boli, I think.
Is it South Indian
Well, my mom
sweet?
says Boli.
It's the
Yeah, it's
with the filling.
it's yellow and it's
Oh,
yeah.
are you talking about hoppers? Not
No,
hoppers.
no.
Sorry, not hoppers.
It's like it
It's
looks
like a
roti.
roti
I know.
and
I know. There's something in the middle. I'm just trying to think of what it's called.
Heaven in the middle is what's in the middle.
all the Tamil people are cringing at us right now.
I know exactly what you're saying because I like that, but I don't like.
It's Boli, how my mom says it
How your
anyway.
mum
Right.
says
Yeah.
it.
We'll go with your answer because
Bottu.
Really?
Yeah, my mum
Bottu.
says Bottu in Telugu. They say Bottu
Ah.
apparently.
Yeah, we say Pottu. Yeah.
So maybe that's why. Maybe Telugu is.
More P.
Well, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
really know. I like masala dosa.
okay.
Yeah. I like roti, yeah.
Next question is something that scares you.
Ooh.
Oh, mine's. Oh, you're gonna make me get all serious. Lose the thought of losing someone close to me. That's the biggest thing for me, and I actually think about it often. Because I try to make sure that in every interaction each day, I'm not leaving weird energy or unresolved stuff with people that matter. I just try to remember that, and yeah, I think that's important. I was in a quite serious. I was an injured car accident at the beginning of the year with a motorcyclist who was very horrifically injured that I was first on the scene to witness, and I think that's really stuck with me in terms of being grateful. You don't even know between when you say bye to someone and they're driving somewhere else if they're going to get there. So at every moment, just yeah, that's my one.
I can't think of anything. I don't have any irrational fears like butterflies or even
Who's afraid of butterflies?
I know someone who's afraid of butterflies. Yeah, no, I've always been someone, well, nowadays, I've always been like, if something scares me, I'm going to go for it. But I don't think about things like what you do.
Wait till you're 10 years older.
Okay, I'll wait then.
Wait
We
till
do-
you're-
I'm like, Ragavi, let me tell you. I feel like it's like Back to the future. I'm going back to my younger self. Mistakes I made.
How about favorite show you're watching?
Oh,
I was just saying, I have like gone back to Seinfeld, and I am a.
Yes, greatest
that-
show, one of the greatest shows ever. Yeah.
But do you know why? And this will resonate with you. Watch it now because like I always loved it growing up. Obviously, we were very young watching it. But
Oh no, I still watch it randomly. If I see it on TV, I'll watch it. Yeah.
now it's like it's just hitting differently now, and I figured out why it is. It's because they're my age now.
Yes.
I'm now the age of those characters, and then
They're
like it's
they're
Yeah.
our age. Our age. Yes.
yeah, I'm their age. They're just immortalized.
Yeah.
and you were saying it's timeless as well.
It's so timeless.
Yeah.
Like just
Yes.
that.
You can watch any episode and like still be entertained. Like it's but it's hit or miss though. Like people either love it or hate it. That's what I
True.
mean.
Yeah, it's like coriander. People either like are obsessed with it or cannot have a bar of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what I love about it too, watching it now with everything, is just the role of Elaine, because that even is the one that sort of is the connector. They're terrified of her. Like she runs them, and
Yes.
it's great. It's a bit of a matriarchy, I think, because without her, it all just like falls out of whack. And
I love Kramer, but yeah.
yeah.
I'm actually going back to a lot of shows right now because I missed a lot of good TV and good movies when I was younger. I mean, I didn't watch The Matrix until literally the beginning of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really behind. So I'm going back and watching shows. Right now, I'm watching Power and New Girl. Do you guys know
Yes, New Girl. Yep.
Yeah.
Jess is funny. I watched like a couple of seasons of it. It was entertaining. Yeah.
I
haven't
love
watched it.
her. It's so quirky. I
Yes.
feel like I would be a brown version of her in a way, but she's so much more cuter and yeah.
It's funny that you said that. I think everything that's happened since Black Lives Matter, I've become increasingly sensitive to when there's not diversity in what I'm watching. So when I've actually been doing the same thing. I've been revisiting what I grew up on and going, no wonder I felt the way I did. There's like no representation within these things. Like I was watching, what was I watching? Ferris Bueller's Day Off, like Back to the Future. It's just these like tokenistic sort of, people of color roles. But I'm also a huge Adventure Time fan. Adventure Time, I will always go to that and be happy.
You guys would probably like. Have you guys heard of Insecure?
Yeah. It's right. It's so funny that you say that. I've been going on to her about how she has to watch it. It is
such a good show. Such a good show. Yeah.
I've watched episodes. I just don't know where to watch it. Where is it on?
I think it's on Stan or Prime. No, it's on Foxtel. It's on Foxtel.
See, that's why
Sorry,
I don't have Foxtel. I've already got Netflix, Stan, Prime, and I'm not going to go off.
And on that tip as well, which I think is absolutely brilliant, is Atlanta by Donald Glover.
Yeah, it's on my list. Yeah. But why I like Insecure is like it's one of the few shows where it's like not like extreme or like traumatized version of like a person of color story. It's like a normal person story. Like what do they do every day? What's love? What's relationship? What's friendship?
Head whenever she's doing like the mirror thing. I love that.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, like she's so funny. I love her. Yeah,
she's amazing. You have to. We need to find a way to get. Yeah, you will love it. I've been saying this to her for years. Yeah.
What's a place you're itching to travel to after the pandemic is over?
Japan for me, for sure.
Ooh, I was supposed to be in Jamaica during COVID, so I would love to go there. But I want to go to America. Have
you been?
I've been to Hawaii and I've been to LA. But yeah, no, I would really love to go back. Look, anywhere. I love traveling. I used to travel every year before COVID, so yeah. I was supposed to be in Jamaica for a month.
I know.
That being said,
sorry. I was going to say, I think us people in the 30s, I think we have the same preferences because I went to Japan like 3 years ago. It was my favorite country in the world. Like I wanted to go there.
But you too. Yeah. And that was another thing. You talk about shows. All I do is watch the Japanese channel at home. It's amazing. It is so amazing.
Yeah. Well, wait till you go to Japan. I've been to Japan twice in literally 5 years. Yeah. And I would go back, but I always come back broke. It's so expensive.
Is it?
Yes, it is. But it's worth it. Like where did you go to? Like obviously Tokyo, Kyoto.
I went during the cherry blossom season.
I just missed it. Yeah.
And then I also, when I went back, so the first time I went, I went in winter and we snowboarded for 2 weeks and then just traveled for another 2 weeks. And then we were in Niseko, Kyoto, Tokyo.
Yes.
And then cherry blossom season when I went back. Where did you get to go though?
We did Tokyo for like about 10 days. I like to say. I think we did Japan for 10 days in total because we did like Hong Kong then Japan, but it was just like amazing. Like it's like everything kind of I envisioned Japan being. Like it's one of those places where like typically they say happiness is the difference between expectation versus reality, and I felt like it was one of the few places where my expectations were probably like met or like surpassed.
Yeah. I mean, like their reverence for like nature.
Yes.
And like the food for me as well. Like
amazing. Yeah.
One cuisine outside of like South Asian culture that I could happily eat like most days, it would be Japanese.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just their artisanship with every aspect of what they do. I love that. It's so, it's incredible.
I always tell people this story where there's like the one thing that put me off about Japan was the language barrier because it was so hard to try and get around. And I remember I was trying to find this Alice in Wonderland themed restaurant, of course, knowing me, and I couldn't find it. And I was walking around for probably about half an hour. I stopped some random businessman and he was walking in one direction. He took me in the other direction. 15 minutes away from where he was going. Yeah. And he spent...
just to get you there.
Just to get me there. And then he spent another 15 minutes because it was underground and we couldn't figure it out because all the buildings have all these like signs on them, and he took me down. He talked to them. He was like, "Yes, she's been looking for you for ages." Da da da. Da. Left, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going home right now." So it probably took him another 2 hours to get home. Like you
Wow.
won't. That does not happen in Australia. Like you ask
Yeah.
people for the
Yeah.
directions, and they go, "Oh yeah, mate, just go down the street, turn left, you'll be right," and it's like the wrong directions. They didn't even know where they're
Yeah.
pointing you towards. But yeah, I just they're so polite over there, so it was
Yes.
great.
Upset, like I have this vision. I need to be in an onsen.
Ah, amazing.
Oh, that was such an interesting experience. So I did like an onsen. I think it was like close to Mount Fuji. It was such an interesting experience because me and my wife didn't know that it's separate, like whatever. And it's also like I didn't know it's completely like nude. So like I came out and it was like me and this old Japanese man. He was like sitting on this rock looking at Mount Fuji. I didn't speak Japanese, he didn't speak English. And like I don't know, he said we somehow communicated. He like got off the rock, let me sit on it, like he told me to sit on it. And
Oh,
we're both looking at Mount Fuji together, naked, two strangers. It was pretty interesting. Yeah,
that is so beautiful. I'm a little bit teary,
yeah,
and I have FOMO. That just sounds incredible.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you'll get there. You'll get there.
You can go to Japan.
Hey,
That'd be
we
cool.
like to tour in Tokyo and Japan as well.
Yeah, there to the universe. And that's actually another thing. Like my partner has toured there so much, and they have such an appreciation for other cultural arts.
Yep.
Like
Mm.
Oh, like
I
in
feel like
Japan. Japan
yeah.
has a huge fascination with Collywood. One of my friends,
I did not know that.
What? Are you
one,
serious?
one of my friends made a movie called The Rajini Effect. He's like from the UK, he's Tamil, and it was really kind of a part of it was really around the fact that the Japanese love Rajinikanth. They love Collywood, like they love, yeah, yeah,
Oh, damn. We gotta get there.
yeah.
Okay.
So look that up.
You
We'll
need to
do.
send us these. You've dropped a few kind of cool sounding films. We wanna watch them.
All right. Well, this one my friend made, so I'll see if he like has somewhere online. I can send you that link.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Who is a Tamil, like a fellow Tamil creator that you guys want to give a shout out to?
I mean, we have to give props to Cartel Madras and Nabs. I didn't know that she was Tamil Canadian.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But also Lily Singh. She's the one who started us.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's non-Tamil, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
Lily Singh. That was our first, video that we did. She did that track that was it was like a concept. If Bollywood were rap.
Mm.
It actually doesn't exist online anymore because she didn't get clearance for the sample of Choli Ke Piche.
So this
So
this is another example of how great Toronto is. I actually grew up, so my brother was good friends with her good like best friends from like
Yeah.
I guess elementary school. So like
uh,
I remember like I didn't really know her, but it was like we'd like there was a grocery store where like her friends used to work and she used to be there sometimes. So it's crazy like from knowing that person to like what she's become.
Yeah,
It's
man.
crazy.
well,
Yeah.
she was part of our original success. So we put this concept piece out, and then Sonam Kapoor,
Yeah.
Bollywood,
Yeah.
you know, um, she shouted. She was like, "Lily, have you seen this?" And then Lily commented and said, "I can't remember what she said, dope or something."
I don't remember what
And
that.
then and then the internet broke. They're like, "Oh my God, she commented on it." Yeah, our internet broke.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about favorite childhood memory?
Aw.
Oh my God, my mind went straight to a weird one. I have this memory where I went on a bicycle ride with my friend in the Shire one day, and we were just going to try and go for a loaf of bread. And then, no, this is literally the first thing that came to my mind. And we went and we got the bread, but then we were like, it's such a nice day. And I was on her brother's bike, and it was like a really uncomfortable seat. But I was like, let's just keep going. And we just kept riding for the rest of the day, like
Aw.
just on and on and on. And then I remember I said to her, I was like, you know what would make this day so beautiful? Like that sort of iconic scene in a movie where there's like a burst water main and then everybody goes through it. In a corner, burst water main
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
through it, and it was like
Aw.
so beautiful. And then so we spent the whole day, and I think what was beautiful, we didn't plan that day at all. We didn't even intend to be out that long. It was such an organic sort of day. And then when we came home, I couldn't walk the next day though because of that freaking bike seat.
You know when you say bike through the Shire, I just think of Lord of the Rings. I don't know why, but
But yeah, that's one of my favorite childhood memories.
This one always pops into my head, and I don't know whether it's more of an embarrassing one for me or not. It's not really embarrassing. It was just in that moment I was. So my parents and I always used to go to a church, like Mulgoa Church. Have you been there?
No.
So it's like out in the middle of the bush somewhere, and I just remember my dad's friends were there, and they were like, "Ragavi, you dance, right?" And they were just standing around in a circle, and they were not forcing me. They were like, "Just dance," and I was in my, Punjabi kurta, as you would say, just chunkaing, just doing some little movements, and they loved it. And
Aww.
They still bring it up, like whenever I see them, they're like, "No, I remember when you were a little girl, you used to be a little dancer, and now look at you." And I don't know why, but I find that like I felt like that was probably the moment where I was like, "Oh, people like it when I dance."
True. That's good. And it's funny, I've got a similar one, not from me dancing, but I remember, so my dad was very connected to the Indian Tamil community and used to obviously sing at temple functions. So we would always go to see different friends' daughters, Iyengetrams. And remember we went to Canberra, which is really, really cold. And I'm pretty sure we went in winter as well, which is interstate for us. And I saw what I thought was Bharatanatyam at the time. And it blew my mind because I knew this girl like as a family friend, and she was such a quiet, meek kind of girl. And then on stage, she just owned that stage for like, an hour and a half, something. And I was mesmerized. I was just like, I feel like I know a superstar. And all these years later, I found out, so I tried to go to a guru to learn Kathak, and I ended up finding someone who said, "I don't do Kathak, but I can teach you Kuchipudi." And it turned out that Kuchipudi is actually the specific dance that traces back to my mother's ancestral. So my mum's from Fiji. They were blackbirded, like basically forced onto, like stolen in a way, tricked onto boats to get to Fiji for manual labor. But before that, she's Telugu. She's from Andhra Pradesh. And Kuchipudi is actually the dance from Andhra Pradesh. So the universe somehow made me find this guru that taught me the dance that connects me to the ancestral homeland of my mother, which I have no connection with. And on top of that, I found out that dance performance I saw when I was a kid was actually Kuchipudi.
Wow.
It wasn't Bharatanatyam. So
wow.
Yeah, that's also, I'll never forget seeing that performance of hers. And we did see a number of, friends' daughters do their Iyengetrams, but that particular one, I just was mesmerized. And yeah. There you go.
What is a pet peeve of yours?
People not walking their talk.
Oh.
If you say it, do it. If you're not going to do it, don't say it. Like, I can't stand lip service. That really bothers me. And there's a lot of blah, blah, blahing these days. So do the thing and be the thing. Don't just keep blah, blahing.
Yeah, you know what? Same.
Yeah.
If someone says they're going to do something, do it. Because I'm very much someone where if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be in communication. If I'm not going to do it, or if it's going to go somewhere else.
And that's the other thing, yeah. If things change, just communicate the change.
Yeah.
I feel like South Asians have this, and I think because I'm quite westernized, I see it. They have this tendency where if they can't say yes, or if things change,
they ignore you.
They just ignore you, or they don't respond.
Yeah.
Hold on, what's happening? I can't read your mind. What's happening right now? Can you do the thing? I don't know.
Yeah, I see it all the time. I agree. A celebrity whose life you'd want to experience for one day.
Are we not celebrities?
Do they?
other than yourself.
Famous? Shit. Living or dead?
Anybody.
Prince. He's my, like, I would have loved to just know what it's to be like to be Prince, and just for me, he was the closest to like magic that has walked within my lifetime on this earth, and just to know what it would be like to feel the effect that your music has when you play, and to be that skilled. And Prince, yeah.
Cool. I was just thinking, and I was like, celebrity, like I've always said that I don't know whether I actually want to be famous because I know there's a lot of negative like things that come with that as well. So I went to the total opposite spectrum. I'm thinking the Dalai Lama.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
because I want to experience enlightenment.
Okay.
You know?
Wow.
And then I can come home and be like, okay, this is what I've got to do. Take these steps.
Actually,
exactly.
I think I have to change my answer because Prince was pretty tortured. So I don't know how pleasant that experience would be. But yeah.
And what's a PSA you want to leave our audience with?
Ah, just be kind and compassionate and don't judge other people too much. And yeah, just do you. Like, public service announcement. Yeah, just find and own whatever it is that you are and wherever that place is. And accept that, yeah, whatever's happening, it's all a product of all the things that you've been through. Like, for better or for worse. Don't, don't. It can be a real waste of time to wish away certain experiences. And I know as brown people, especially as brown women, most brown women I know have been through some pretty horrendous trauma. So yeah, just remember that what you see might not be what's underneath the surface of a lived experience, and just have that mindfulness. Yes.
Yeah. I think we were talking about this right before as well. It's so much easier for people to feel like they can be mean or cynical sometimes, because that's just, if someone's positive, then it's immediately like, what's wrong with them? Why are they being that way? Why are they being so happy? So find your way to be happy, because that is what's gonna, like you said, find out what you're going to be passionate about, what's going to fulfill you, and stick to that. Be in alignment with that.
And just be conscious of your energy, I guess, both in terms of what you're investing, and also what you're just putting out in the world, and just think about the place that you're coming from. Yeah.
All right, well, that's a wrap. And you guys, the three goals I had for any podcast is entertaining, learning, and there's one more, but I forgot. But I feel like I feel like you guys hit all three. Yeah, you guys are so amazing. You hit all three. I think this is a great episode. I mean, it's probably typically longer than what I usually do, but I think there was nothing kind of boring or filling about it. Like, it was all like good stuff. So I want to just thank you guys for kind of well, I want to thank you guys for kind of hopping on and like sharing your story and words of wisdom. If people are listening to this and they're like, hey, I want to connect with Ragavi and Shyamla and like pick their brain, or like, collaborate, whatever it is, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Because I know you guys don't like social media, or at least Shyamla doesn't, but what's the best way?
When it comes to Bindi Bosses, I'm very, very happy to respond and connect with people. So Bindi Bosses on Instagram. Raghavi's also got her own page on.
Yeah,
do you like people sliding into your DMs on your personal page?
I mean, sliding through them through Bindi Bosses.
Okay, Bindi Bosses.
But I absolutely I respond to everyone. I think it's important to be generous and connect with people as well. So yeah, at Bindi Bosses, and we're getting a new website coming up as well.
Ooh,
so
watch this space.
Watch the space.
Watch for new faces. I tried to rhyme, it didn't work.
I feel like that's what I was also thinking. I feel like you guys could probably have your own podcast and it'd be very entertaining.
Hey! We're the Fun Factory. You should see what, like, we are quiet. We're like
the quiet ones
in rehearsal. The young ones are just like
I don't believe it, but we'll see. I don't believe it.
Most of my time just laughing, cracking up at their excitement. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll include the links to, I guess, your website if it comes out before this podcast kind of releases, and put the Instagram account for Bindi Bosses. And before we kind of wrap it up, for anybody listening, if you can give this podcast a 5 out of 5, especially on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, that'd be amazing. And if you can comment, share, and like our stuff on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, that'd be great. And finally, if you have any feedback or ideas on future guests or topics, reach out to me at hello@thetamilcreator.com. Well, thank you guys again, Shyamla and Ragavi from Bindi Bosses for joining us. And yeah,
You're very welcome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having us. Can you say thank you in Tamil?
Nandri.
Na-
Vanakkam. Nandri vanakkam.
Nandri, say it again.
Nandri
Nandri,
vanakkam.
vanakkam. Do you? Oh yeah, it's just
Ara, can you
it's
say
the
it?
pronunciation.
my Tamil is horrible. My Tamil is like Tanglish. It's like Tamil in English because it's only good enough for my mom to understand and nobody else. But I'll say, you said how to say thank you? Nandri, right? Nandri Banako?
Nandri,
Yeah.
vanakkam,
Yeah.
vanakkam, vanakkam.
We're gonna use this last 20 seconds for sure as a blooper. Awesome.